everybody. This is Divided We Stand. It's Saturday, the 10th of June, moving along. And roughly 9:05, something like that. So it's good to see everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. If you can hear me clearly, please put something in the chat there, folks, so I don't mumble on without any knowledge whether you can hear me or not. Hello, Karen. Hello, Silly Wonka. Hello, Anthony. Hello, Joey. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Hear you fine. Okay, that sounds great. Okay, this is just kind of strange because I'm using the earbuds here and I don't hear myself, so it's just kind of odd. Anyway, it's good to see everybody tonight on Divided We Stand. If you're unfamiliar with the channel, this is the Divided We Stand channel. It is the channel created by David Price and myself 3.5 years ago when we realized that the Republican Party was going to be intransigent and there was no sense in negotiating with the other side. And to this day, it's pretty much the same thing. We also have a page on Facebook. It's called the Divided We Stand Facebook group page. We invite you to become a member. There are a few questions that you have to answer first. However, we also ask that you subscribe to our channel. We are not monetized. We're not looking for anything, just the ability to commiserate with one another in these difficult times. So it's Divided We Stand on YouTube. And again, we ask that you subscribe, share, thumbs up, thumbs down. Either way, we'd be real happy that you are a part of this. So, yeah. Yes, Silly, lots of news. So without any further ado, I'd like to speak with David Price, who is at a different location tonight. We've had a lot of things happening. Dave!
Why, hello. Yeah, I am here.
Different venue. Yeah, where are you? Where are you?
Well, actually, if I had a really good arm, I could probably throw a stone and hit your house.
Danger.
Happen to be staying with friends in the Bridgeton area. So using a strange computer, using different lighting, using different earbuds, using different everything. So this could be or should be a fascinating show because if nothing else, it won't be like any other show. And let me explain some of that, what I mean by that, not only that. Brian and I have been talking, we've been talking on the past couple shows about this idea that we have. And while we'd like to reach as many people as possible, that just makes sense, right? If you're going to do something. And we've done a couple midweek things that have actually been more successful in certain ways, depending on how you judge things. And the way you kind of judge things online is number of viewers or / listeners that you get. So we're thinking about, and we'll need you to guide us, we're thinking about shortening the Saturday program maybe to an hour. So going 9 to 10, and then doing something midweek. Am I kind of on track with what we talked about, Brian?
Yes. Quite frankly, David and I had discussed a few of our videos. It's just these strange occurrences. For example, the shorts were picking up thousands of views, and our live presentations were getting 60 views. Not that that really matters, but it does in a certain way. Again, we're not monetized. But our last two videos, which were not live, had like 950 views and 300 views respectively. So we're getting anywhere from 3 to 9 times the viewership just by uploading it. Now, we don't want to get rid of this format because we do enjoy the live format. All of you know that David and I are improvisers, and we feel completely at home doing this type of thing, and we enjoy it. But we are moving into the summer season, and it affords me more time. And then I can work with Dave and we can experiment trying to get more people involved. Again, this is not monetized. So again, if you're new to this channel, we are not looking for anything from you. Okay, we're one of the few channels that don't do that. But we're interested in how these algorithms work. We'll never truly know, but we can look at the output. And of course, the days that you actually upload the videos, I assume, matters too. So David and I are going to to experiment. And tonight, in a certain sense, is an experiment because we won't be going on as long tonight as usual. But we still want to be faithful to all of you on the Saturday night show because it's just become a mainstay for us. So again, it's a work in progress, but nothing's changed in terms of having a Saturday night show. We will have a Saturday night show. We'll just add something else.
And one of the other things we talked about, because it's your channel as much as it's our channel, is we want to really do more with comments and questions. Because if you have a comment, you're obviously interested in something. So commenting on an American situation or a world situation. And then the other thing is questions, and we can kind of gear it to that. Because we have things we can talk about. But it's not just two old guys talking. We want to get you involved as much as possible. So I saw where Karen put up a hi, Dave. So Karen, back to you. Hi. And Brian, we'll turn it back to you. This week, what are you thinking about politically in terms of America and indeed, of course, a divided country? And again, another reason, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to experiment is 2024 sounds like it's a long way away. But it's not. Election, if you follow the news, and most of you do, and watch this channel, the presidential race is already heating up. Now, of course, you've got a Republican primary coming. You've got a Democratic primary coming. It appears at this point, person A is going to represent the Democrats, and of course that would be our current president, Joe Biden, although we probably might even talk a little bit tonight about his challenger, his first challenger of note, Robert Kennedy Jr. in the race. And then, of course, the Republican race is kind of wide open. But most people feel it's right now between Donald Trump and Florida's governor, Ron DeSantis. And again, we make no pretense. We are liberals. We support liberal candidates. We support Liberal Party. Which pretty much puts us in the camp of the Democrats. And certainly if you look at Joe Biden, whether you like Joe Biden or whether you don't like Joe Biden, whether you think Joe Biden is a good president or you don't think Joe Biden is a good president, at this point, and Brian, I'll ask you to agree, I think it is safe to say that Joe Biden is more liberal than any of the many candidates that the Republicans have put forward. Would you agree with that contention?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But of course, the problem becomes, which is something we've talked about on the show before, Joe Biden does have two problems. One is any incumbent has a record. And there are people who don't like what he's done or don't like what he hasn't done. Okay? And let's look at his latest victory, although some are saying it was a draw, some are saying the Republicans actually won. The thing with it, we've been talking about show after show after show. Fortunately, tonight we don't have to. The debt ceiling crisis has been averted at this point. And what that simply means is the Republicans in Congress and the Democrats in Congress were able to come up with a plan that would not make the United States default on bills it already owes. And then, of course, President Biden, who had been active in the negotiations with Republican leader Kevin McCarthy, signed as he would. But so they're the types of things that Biden has a record with. The second thing, Brian, is with age. And there are people that feel that Joe Biden is too old to be president of the United States. Well, there's nothing in the Constitution that sets an ending age. There is something in the Constitution that starts the beginning age, and that is you must be 35 years old. And when he runs, Mr. Biden will be that plus almost 50 years. So, Brian, does it bother you at all that Joe Biden will be 84 when he runs for president? Which would mean he'd be, 88 when he finishes, right? Correct?
Well, one thing I think everybody's going to learn from me, the liberal that I am and the liberal that you are, they were both pragmatic and realizing the tenuous situation that's going on right now in terms of democracy. The fact that Biden is 84 makes no difference to me at this point. It normally would. And I don't like the way he walks. I don't like the way he falls. I don't even like half of his politics. But as you said, if you compare him to what is on the other side, that's the real danger. I am not of the ilk to say that all these politicians are the same. And I'm coming up from somebody who's a liberal. They are not the same, and it can get a lot worse. Some people seem to think that they're all kind of on the same team, and they're it's all theater, and that's that. But it's not all that, because they're deadly serious on that right side. And that right side, not meaning the correct side, just the bad side, on the right wing side, you see what happened on January 6th. They're ready to come after us. So this is a deadly situation, and it's a situation that has occurred in many Eastern European countries. So again, the fact that he's 84, Dave, makes no difference to me whatsoever. I don't care if he were 104. You have to stick with him at this point, unless you have a better alternative, which I'm open to.
Now, I think that's the key word, alternative. Everybody who watches or listens to this show, if they're politically active, probably has someone they feel would be the candidate they would like to be the president of the United States. Okay? For many of our viewers, I'm sure there are AOC fans. AOC speaks her mind. She's young. She's vibrant. She stands for the extreme liberal views. Of course, we've seen the power that Bernie Sanders has held. There are still Hillary Clinton fans out there. There are some who really liked Pete Buttigieg. And obviously, there are people who supported the current vice president, Ms. Harris. And we could go a whole list of candidates. But the reality of it is, at this point, barring anything unforeseen, Joe Biden is going to be one of the people running for president. And notice what I'm going to say next. One of the people running for president who can win. And that's very important. All right. The idea, there really is no power in runner-up here. None. Now, let's pick up what Karen says here. The Republicans want to slash and burn down any help for those who need real help. Karen, I don't think it could be said any better than that. If you look at the people tonight, maybe in the show, we always mention a few of those groups. Silly Wonka says, happily voting for Biden again. He's made his choice. Sleepy Joe is dementia on 2 feet, just a sad man he used to be, sadly. Take that comment back. Okay, please, previous one. So Rudy, again, we're not argumentative. My question is, what you say may really be true. I happen to think he doesn't have dementia, but I'm not the doctor, and I don't know, I can't make a physical determination on that. Remember, people, and I'm not making excuses, Joe Biden has always had a stuttering problem, right, Brian? I mean, he's had that.
Yes, he stammered since he was young.
And so, and part of that is he kind of went into not going into politics, but he kind of prepared himself because he felt that working on the speeches that way would give him a better command of the language. So my question, again, to anyone is, when the time comes, as it appears now, Mr. Biden will be the Democratic nominee. And when you go to vote, and hopefully you will, I think one of my wishes is more Americans would vote than do. You're going to have to pick between Mr. Biden, current President Biden, and whomever the Republicans put up. Now, Keith is from New Zealand, right? Is he in New Zealand now?
Yes, he's from New Zealand.
Yeah, he's from New Zealand. So, Keith, again, you have a different perspective on things, and I like your question. Why would anyone stand for president in the current political system? Well, I think there are two basic reasons, and they're the same that has been since, not George Washington, because technically, although he was elected, he was kind of appointed. There was nobody out there, right? Won the Revolutionary War, we're going to make him the president. So ever since then, whether it was Adams, Jefferson, going all the way through FDR, John Kennedy, all the way to today, I think it's true. There's two reasons. Sometimes they're intertwined, sometimes they're second. People would run for president because they want the power, the fame, the glory, the name. The second reason would be that they feel they can really do something good for the country. Now, in a divided situation like we have, obviously, and again, Brian, I think it's important that we keep in mind it's not a 50-50 division, really, right? It's really not. If it were, that would be one thing. It's really a 33-33-33 type division, with a third leaning toward Republican views, conservative views. I call them radical right. I call them un-American views, but you call them what you want. Liberal, Democrat. I call them American views, are much more in line with the Constitution than Republicans. And then you got a third of the people that sit it out. And of course, the battle will be fought with who can get the most votes from the people who normally sit it out. So again, Keith, to answer your question as best as I can answer it, is why would anyone run for president? One of two, and maybe the two are intertwined. One is for the fame. Hey, Trev, howdy, all back to you. Is the fame, the glory, the power, the money, the prestige, if you will, on one side. Because remember, we've said it before, we'll say it every time. A politician has to have an ego in order to run. Would you agree with that, Brian? I mean, a person who is egoless or reclusive or an introvert.
It'd be very rare. Yeah, I would agree with you.
I don't know there's ever been one. I don't know how you could be one. I mean, you put yourself out there. Now, I think in the other thing kind of implied or inferred, implied, I guess would be more than inferred, with Keith's statement is, given the craziness, why would anyone run for president? And I think that's a very legitimate question. I think you come back to the two answers, okay? And certainly the reasons are different for each person. Donald Trump is running for president for a different reason than Joe Biden is running for president, for a different reason than Ron DeSantis is running for president, is a different reason why Robert Kennedy Jr. is running for president, is a different reason than pick your other side of the Republicans. But they're there. So Keith says, we have elections here. Soon we have the same issues, left versus right, divided. Now, something I want to talk a little bit about tonight, Brian, and pick your brain a little bit, is once upon a time, not so long ago, not in a galaxy far, far away, or time long, long ago, like in Star Wars, I always kind of described politics as the art of compromise, right? I think, because there's always been differences. We said before, Brian, I believe America has never been united where everybody spoke of one voice. Maybe one of the closest things was the way Americans approached inevitably World War II. But I think it's important to remember even there was a large percentage of people who wanted to stay out of the war, felt we had no business being in there, right? Actually, it was quite a bit of sympathy or empathy. Empathy is not the right word, sympathy, or maybe even admiration for what the Germans were accomplishing. And so you had people even then speaking out and doing that. But back to now, with the country so divided, even more so maybe. Well, let me ask you, Brian, do you think, based on what you know, do you think the country is more divided today than it's ever been? And you can answer this two ways, or two different answers. One would be in your knowledge of history, so that would be from George Washington today. And the second would be in your lifetime, which I guess for you, my first president was Dwight Eisenhower. I don't know who was president when you were born. So you can answer it both ways. So let's tackle the first one. What do you think about history as a whole, the American history as a whole? Are we more divided today, less divided today, equally divided today? What do you think?
Well, you make the right point. I mean, I have not lived in, the 1800s. I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was like to live in 1862, not knowing what's going to happen to the country in 1863, whatnot. I grew up during Vietnam, but I was still somewhat young at the time. I kind of understood. I can't really speak in terms of the entire American history, but if my knowledge of history as it is now is correct, if it's correct, what I've learned in high school and college and just from knowing people, in terms of the actual danger of this country becoming completely divided, I would say this has to be the worst up to the Civil War. The Civil War was the worst, but it certainly could cascade out of control. So I would say in my lifetime, it's definitely the worst. No doubt about it. I mean, I don't care what you could say about Nixon and the Vietnam War. When I saw January 6th, that was, in fact, I was discussing it tonight, and I got angry just even thinking about it. This has to be the worst, and we could really go down the rabbit hole very, very quickly if Trump's elected again, or if any Republicans elected again. So, in short, I would say it's not as bad as the Civil War, but it wouldn't take much for it to ignite. But it's definitely, since 1960, this is the most divided this country has ever been. No doubt about it.
And I think another thing to keep in mind is modern technology, modern achievements make it even more deadly that we're so divided. Because certainly, let's take climate change. All right. The Republicans, almost to a person, whether they're state or national politicians, do not believe that they either don't believe in climate change, they don't believe that climate change is the danger that many people do, they do not, or they really don't care, right? Now, we can very easily destroy ourselves, and some people believe we're already on that path, and it's irreversible. But you still have to continue to battle, even if we're doomed. And because I don't think you can honestly say with certainty that we're doomed. But of course, the decisions made today and those coming in 2024 could have great bearing on what happens in climate. And you could go on the nuclear threat, right? I have to be honest. One of my biggest fears about Donald Trump, he blindsided me so many times. I honestly thought he might, because he's such a vindictive, angry person, but I honestly thought he might get us into a nuclear war. He took another tactic. He kind of sided up to the dictators, because again, I'm not inside his head or his psyche, but I think Donald Trump admires that Putin and other dictator leaders didn't have to deal with anything, and Trump would like to be that type of leader. A new thing that we may discuss, I think maybe I'd like to do a special show on these, well, not special, as we do these midweek things. And I think it's something we need to talk about. It's on some people's lips right now, is artificial intelligence. You say, well, wait a minute. What does politics and artificial intelligence have to do with one another? Well, the laws that govern the use of artificial intelligence are going to come from the politicians, who have already proven that their grasp of technology is not as good as it probably should be. So, Brian, throw up a couple of those comments, because we really want to focus on those today. Any comment or any question, it doesn't matter which one. I have to agree with Trev on that, and I don't mean that reluctantly. Your point, and it's true. The Civil War literally, brother against brother. I mean, that's not figurative in some cases. But the two sides had equal access to weapons. We found out that the Union, again, using technology, whether it was the Merrimack and the Monitor, or the muskets, that they suddenly turned rifles. So the rebels were having to use antiquated arms, and it was kind of minor. But I don't see Republicans and Democrats, we'll say, taking to a war. We've gotten away. I mean, I don't know, Brian. I don't see how. I mean, the South was able to raise an army, right? The North was able to raise an army. I don't see what's going to happen is one of those sides, if it were today, one side would have the army, and I don't see. Currently it would be the president would be in charge, commander in chief, but I don't know if they would fund. But my point is, I really don't see that. What I do see.
Well, they're not going to try anything while Biden has control, while he's commander in chief, and that's the advantage we have.
Right. The other thing I would say is, What I do see as a reality is a war being fought in the courts, right? A war being fought, an insurrectionist kind of terrorist war, which exactly is January 6th was that. It was, you can call it terroristic, you can call it an insurrection, but it was certainly aimed against the United States of America. We've talked before, we have way too many guns. We're not going to eliminate guns. It's kind of, I mean, I don't mean you give up talking about it, creative ways to do that. But what I really see as important for those of us that support liberals is try, remember I said a third, and a third. I think we need to come up with good ways to convince that third of the country, A, to vote if they don't vote, and B, to vote for the candidate that we deem best. And for me, that would be whoever's running from the Democratic process. I mean, the Democratic, not process, I'm sorry, Democratic Party. And right now we said that would be Mr. Biden. Let's shift our focus for a moment. Now let's look at Keith's comment here. Isn't the USA in a civil war now? Left versus right, the weapon of choice is power and corruption at all levels of society. Yes, Keith.
A cold civil war, you could say.
It's almost like, you're right. That's a very good analogy, Brian, where in fact, just as like we weren't really, when the communists were our enemy and we were in a war with them, it was a Cold War, words, politics, statements, but not really guns, although of course they were there, right? And that, and of course those guns were large nuclear weapons. Now,
I believe they're talking about climate change. I think she's talking about.
Yeah, Republicans don't believe it's real. Democrats do seriously consider the consequences for all of us. Again, we talk about different books to read and different shows. Not that we shill for them or anything. One that I started watching, I only watched.
I just think they like warm weather, and because they still want their FEMA checks when, the Outer Banks get flooded in North Carolina. So I think they know. I think they just seem to like the weather.
Maybe, but
like
I think
Putin. That's what Putin thinks. Russia will have a warmer climate. So
like I said, first I'll do this, and I want to speak to Common Garden's comment. But there's a show on Apple TV called Extrapolations, relatively new. And basically it's 8 episodes. I only watched the first one, and what they extrapolate is what could happen if we don't do anything with climate change. And in the first episode, the premiere episode, it puts it in the future, and it keeps going further and further. So the first episode was set in 2050, which is roughly 25 years away. And basically what it came down to is business concerns, money concerns, didn't want to have any environmental impact that would lower their ability to make money. And you saw Greenland literally evaporating or crushing into the sea. So anybody, and a couple of people have said, climate change is real, first of all. And as I said, Republicans seem not, like I said, not to believe it is, or not to believe it's a danger that I think it is. And I would hope that any logical thinking person would see. And I forget who put it up, just a comment before, which really, hopefully, was able to move some people who were either opposed or undecided about climate change, would be the orange sky, whether it was New York. Now, as I understand it, and always presented to me, we live, as I've said before in the show, we live in Crystal City, and literally from our window of our apartment, we can see National Airport. And the part of the airport we can see is a giant tower that every airport has, right? It was so smoky, hazed, that we could not make out the tower. Now that's Washington, D.C. with fires all the way from Canada. And you saw the orange, somebody mentioned the orange skies. I don't understand, Brian, I'm kind of at a loss to figure out why someone could see that picture and not believe that something's wrong,
Or even if they do know that something's wrong, they're willing to make that a part of the apocalypse,
It would be interesting. You bring up an interesting point, Brian. And I assume there may even be numbers.
Maybe encouraging it.
I don't have it. There are a group of religious people. I don't know how large, but they're definitely there. Many of them are doomsday preppers. So we kind of look at Idaho and Montana, but they could be anywhere where they welcome the end of times on Earth, or they'd even go so far as to want to bring them on.
Right.
And the reason being, and you've dealt with this again and again and again, but understand that. I mean, if you if you believe that there is a heaven, right? Well, first, okay, A, you believe there is a God. B, you believe there is a heaven. C, you believe that good people go to heaven. And D, you believe you're a good person. Then it stands to reason that you might lean toward bringing that apocalypse now, right? Because that will get you to heaven faster. And of course, Christian religion isn't the only religion that kind of makes it that way. You've got all the virgins in Islam. So we established, I think, that one difference, of course, is in climate change. Now that's oil price is going to fall. And let's look at what silly.
I don't know if that's going to happen yet now because the Saudis are going to cut their production. They seem. This is where I'm really upset with the Kushners and Trump because it seems like they still have the Saudis in their pocket and vice versa because they got $2 billion in the Saudis. And I know I'm speculating, but there's a lot of pressure on the Saudis to increase that price of oil. And they're probably hurting themselves. And I personally think this has a lot to do with Republicans, mainly Trump's, who want to see that price of oil go up and obviously turn the economy upside down. And that will hurt Biden. And they want to do it within the next year. If you notice, it's got to be done in the next year.
Well, you're going to see a lot of things, between now and then. And of course, the role of the Republicans have put on themselves is obviously to make Joe Biden the devil incarnate. All right. Now, I think it's a little hard to make Uncle Joe the devil incarnate, but some people are already there, right? I think it's a lot easier. You don't have to make Donald Trump the devil incarnate. He is. You don't have to make Ron DeSantis the devil incarnate. He is. Okay. Have you saying his friends, like I said, almost a stone's throw from where Brian's coming from tonight. We're almost neighbors. And they had property in Florida that they've given up simply because they do not like the direction that Ron DeSantis has. I hate to say the word lead because I don't even think he's a leader, but we'll use that. The position that Ron DeSantis has advocated in Florida and has been able to convince the Republican-led legislature to follow through on. Now, we've talked before, and so I think, it's like pick your poison. You've often said when we talk about death, you want cancer, you want a gun, is one better than the other. And that's kind of where I find myself with Trump and DeSantis. I don't want either one. Now, Joey just put up an interesting point. And again, this is the realism, Brian, that you and I try to talk about. Chris Christie would be better than Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump. However, Chris Christie certainly turns things to his advantage. When he thought he could become Attorney General, I believe that's what he had in mind, he really catered to, kowtowed to, supported Donald Trump. Now, I think Chris Christie is not a dumb man. He was governor of the state I lived in for all the years he was governor of New Jersey. And I think I still don't quite get how he thought Trump was going to appoint him when Trump's son-in-law was Jared Kushner and Christie had been the prosecutor who put Jared's father in prison. I don't quite get that. But here's the thing, Joey. When you say, what do you think? Chris Christie cannot get elected. Why can't Chris Christie get elected? Because he can't win the Republican primary.
But he can do damage to Trump.
That is true. But here's the problem, Brian. He's already done damage for Trump by just entering. Did you notice what he entered on Wednesday of this week? It was Tuesday or Wednesday. I can't remember which day. Christie entered. And the very next day, Trump, not mincing any words, started talking about his weight and his fatness. Now, Chris Christie is a fat man. Okay, there's no question about that. I'm sure he didn't choose that, possibly, but certainly, instead of coming out and debating a point, Trump is already starting attacking, as he did his opponents in the Republican primary before. Most political analysts that I have run across in terms of either watching or reading think this election, this primary, and then leading up to the election is going to be the most uncivil in modern times. And certainly if you go back when I was working at the museum, God, I mean, I did a lot of research for touring on early elections, and they were brutal. I mean, what was it? Like Samuel Adams was described by one as a hermaphrodite. I mean, they just do any charge out, right? Any charge out. But then we kind of went through a more civil period. I think the civil period was you kind of agreed that there were certain decorum that you didn't do in public, or at least you might talk about it privately. But now I think that's not the way. I think, that's what one of Trump's legacies is: say whatever you want, doesn't have to be true. Somehow people think that he does speak his mind. He doesn't have a mind to speak. How the hell is he going to speak his mind? What about, what's your take on Mr. Christie as the latest? I mean, you were there when he was governor of New Jersey.
Well, he was the one, Dave, who came out and said, whoever's going to challenge Donald Trump has got to go at him and directly go at him in such a way that you're going to be willing to go toe-to-toe with him. And you basically have to go after the bully. And I kind of felt like he was talking about himself. Now, again, like you said, he's not going to win, but he can, if he can get on the stage in a debate where he attacks him and is able to belittle him in the way that Trump would has belittled Christie, if he can turn the tables on him, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's more into kind of like sports, into boxing, where, the heavyweight champion, like, remember when Tyson was defeated by Buster Douglas, Douglas wasn't expected to get through the fight. It was just a warm up for Tyson, and Tyson got his ass kicked. And then all of a sudden, Tyson's life changed after that. He couldn't win many of the fights. And in the same way with Trump has had this ability to belittle people, body shame them, do whatever he could at the time, and he did it effectively. But nobody was able to forcefully come back and destroy him at his own game. And Christie probably realized that was what he should have done in the first place, and how he blew it in 2015. So to me, he seems like this person who's got to make the comeback for himself, just to destroy Trump because Trump destroyed him. So let's just take him out, and I think he could do service to the country, and he could go down in history as somebody who was like John Brown. He was the meteor who changed things. So if Christie can do that, to make it fashionable to go against Trump within the Republican Party, where now it kind of catches on. Now I'm just speculating, but it's not too difficult to understand where Christie was coming from, because he has debts to repay, in my opinion. And I think it's like almost like a passive aggressive thing. He meant himself when he said, the Republican nominee, if he wants to be a Republican nominee or her, they've got to go after him. And I think he was talking about himself. He was projecting.
Well, I think, obviously right now he's the candidate speaking out, well, speaking out the most against Trump in 2 days or 3 days, whatever he's officially been a candidate. It will be different this time. But let's look for a moment at. Um,
I'm trying to keep up with these. I know they're kind of like going in waves
yeah,
here.
we can see is
I
we've
think
kind of
there
moved
is a
on.
lot of climate change thing pretty much going on here.
Well, I think that's good. I mean, we're not a climate change channel, but as I say, it is a political situation.
Well,
And
again with climate change. I mean, it is happening quickly, but it's not quick in the sense that we can see an overnight thing, of course, and that's part of the problem because Greenland can keep melting and melting, billions of tons of water or gallons of water, each summer, but people aren't going to kind of get it until all of a sudden an entire town goes under. Kind of like what Katrina did. But if you can imagine, one Katrina a week, if you had that happening where it actually hits them, they're going to get it. It's just like this, Dave. It's like the Republicans, a lot of these evangelical Republicans, the Pat Robertsons of the past, they talk a big game about what God's going to do for them. But when that antidote comes out, when that vaccine comes out, they're usually the first in line to get it. They all of a sudden trust science a lot, which makes you wonder. But I think that they'll get it. They'll get it. They have to be in the ditch first, Dave. They have to go in the ditch. And I think that will eventually happen. I think what you'll need is like a 120-degree day a few times, down south, and they'll get it. And
I hope that you're right.
unless, like you said, unless there is a faction say, let this thing burn because that's, the apocalyptic view, and that's going to help my view, and it's going to help me get to heaven sooner, in the same way that 9/11 occurred. 92 versions. I mean, that's what they want. But the problem is, they'll suffer in the end, Dave. They will all suffer, the religious ones and not. The problem is that you and I will have to pay the price with them, and that's the sickening point. And the people like us who actually do give a damn about the planet and believe that this is an island here, and there's nothing here to save us but ourselves. And I don't want to leave it for the next. I don't believe in the apocalypse. As you said, I mean, the real devil is the devil we see, the Donald Trumps of the world. They're the ones that are going to destroy whatever life you have in this universe. They're going to take it away from you. So, in that sense, they may get it. Unfortunately, it's happening too late, and it's going to have to happen in Russia too. And you cannot disregard Russia. So, even though again we are not a climate change channel, we understand the political implications.
Right.
You've got to do. You can't just sit back and too. That's why I said that the Extinction Rebellion, climate change movement. I know we want it all here. We want it all, but you got to keep edging forward to where you need to get to. We're not negotiating with two parties here. There's like 3, 4, 5. You get different countries. You've got to take what you can get and work from there. Work within the system. But to simply say everybody's the same, no goddamn way. No goddamn way. There's no doubt that Joe Biden is not Donald Trump, and I support Biden because he was the one who could defeat Trump.
And that I think,
and that's it.
Stop there just for a moment. You can speculate about a lot of things, right? But you really can't speculate about a fact. And again, keyword is here, fact, that happened in the past. This is fact. Joe Biden is the only Democrat to have beaten Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. Well, you could say that Hillary won, but
you cannot say no, Brian. I'm not going to let you do that. That's because that's not the political system we have. In the political system we have, it's the Electoral College decides the president. I've said, I'm no secret, I would think the Electoral College should be abolished. I don't think it should ever have been in place, but because it is in the Constitution and it does benefit both parties at different times, right? I don't see them. It's almost impossible to get a constitutional convention that would change the Electoral College. So, I mean, yes, but the popular vote doesn't count. What it does, though, Brian, I'm not dismissing it entirely, discounting it entirely. What it does is make people really unhappy. Those who support a candidate who gets the most votes should be president, right? I mean, you think about it, that would make sense, but it doesn't. It doesn't fly that way
Well,
because
but let's not lose the idea that despite the fact that Trump won, and he did win the Electoral College votes in 2016, let's not forget how the system is set up in general with the way you have the states of Utah, South Dakota, Montana, all of these states with very, very small populations carrying a big weight with 2 senators, and it's making almost impossible. The system is rigged. Trump was right. It's rigged, but he was just projecting, and he was able to use
well,
that.
right. But I think with Republicans and climate change, one of the ironies I think is, would you agree that Republicans are the party against immigrants? Would that be a safe statement? Republicans are the party opposed to immigrants coming to America.
Yes, but they kind of like the situation because that's what helps them win elections, is the immigration issue.
Exactly, but I'm just saying that they are the party
I mean, they're
identified.
going to hire those people. Don't get me
I
wrong.
understand all of that, but the idea of it is,
And they'll never see them because they live in the gated community, so they're not really concerned.
the biggest immigration wave will come with climate change.
Yes, it'll be the movement north.
If anybody worried about the border crossings now, wait until the water surrounded Central American countries can no longer function, right? Where are they going to go? Now Trev says here 5 years, 50 power plants, please, would make a good protest sign. I'm laughing. I'm thinking that it would be nice not to have to protest, but we'll never have that world. I mean, I think there'll always be something to protest. I've been on a rant, I should say a channeled rant about book banning. And, maybe I feel that way because I've been an avid reader all my life. Maybe I feel that way because I was a journalist. Maybe I feel that way because I was an English teacher. Maybe I feel that way for all the reasons I mentioned. But again, you have to ask yourself, who is the party banning books? That is the Republicans. And then a lot of people support that. Well, that's great, but a founding premise, and maybe the great founding premise of America, is in the First Amendment, which clearly points out that book banning now, is anti-American. Censoring is anti-American. Let's see what Anthony says here. Do you guys favor ABC over CBS? This week with, yes, on ABC.
George Stephanopoulos, probably, I'm going to guess.
Yeah, George Stephanopoulos. I'm going to answer that. This has nothing really to do with anything other than my personal opinion. I don't, and I've mentioned it before, I'll say it again, I do not watch TV for any of my news simply because TV is entertainment. All right? It has a look, Fox, with its foxy, blonde-haired females. We get into personalities. Again, Rachel Maddow, Oxford, Rhodes Scholar, brilliant. But she takes on a personality. So what I would recommend people do is watch the news. I mean, if you want to, that's fine. But just understand that what you're really watching is entertainment. I'm not saying they make it up. It's just scripted that way. I guess you saw, Brian, this week that the gentleman we did the show on from CNN is no longer with CNN. He did indeed.
Right, Lichty or whatever his name is. Yeah, the CEO.
Yeah, he did indeed get canned for, if anybody's not familiar with that, basically for a number of reasons. But it had a lot to do with what some felt was a mishandled Donald Trump interview. The problem with doing a Donald Trump interview on television is he doesn't play by the rules. I mean, he doesn't even acknowledge the rules.
And he wouldn't have done that interview had they not set it up for him. I
And
mean,
remember,
that's
we talked a lot about that because everybody in that audience was either a Republican or a confirmed Donald Trump supporter, because they're not all the same, but they were there.
I mean, it was essentially like one of his whirlwind tours, with his MAGA rallies. It basically was a
So,
rally.
so again, do I think it will change how the news is reported? No. I mean, from a news standpoint, Donald Trump is news. Okay, I mean he is. But report when he does something like report when 27 counts, right? In the indictments came
31, I
back.
thought. I have it here. It's
31,
31.
31. Okay, 31. I wasn't sure the final number. Again, let's make it clear so our listeners understand.
Maybe 37. Is it 31 or 37? I thought it's 31, but we'll see.
If you find it, let me know. I mean, I know it's look, one is too many if you're a former president, so you certainly go by the numbers. But let's remember, no effect on his ability to run for president, no effect on his serving the presidency. Again, bears repeating, the only requirements for president of the United States: older than 35, born in the United States, lived in the United States for at least 15 years, nothing else. And we can all say, oh my, with shock, just like we can say with shock, Clarence Thomas should not even be able to walk into the Supreme Court, let alone be a Supreme Court justice, for the gifts that every other judge in any other level in the Supreme Court would be taken off the court, taken out of the position they held. But again, I think it's kind of safe to say with Trump, the problem becomes, so while he can run, he, of course, immediately comes out, biggest witch hunt ever, biggest witch hunt ever. How the hell can you do this? What about that? Now, I will say this. I wish sometimes, I'm going to say my people, that would be the Democratic, more liberal Democrats, would be a little bit more careful in what they do. I wish Hillary had not used a private server, even though full well I understand why she did it. She wanted to be able.
Yeah, it's unnerving when you see that with Biden, with the documents. I mean, of course, it's not the same thing as Trump. But why even have that shit there?
And that's what I don't get. I mean, but I do think this: Trump will never say why he did with documents. He'll deny he did it.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't matter. Biden, I think, will own up to it, even if it's just to say it was a dumb, stupid thing I did. He won't, just because I just don't think he will do it that way. Again, because I don't think it's as dangerous. And remember, everyone, it's not necessarily the act; it's the cover-up is always worse than the act. And Donald Trump covers up everything. And if you were a good president, you wouldn't have to cover up as much. I mean, take Nixon and Watergate. Watergate and Burger was bad. He didn't, and also he was so far ahead. Why do that? But again, it becomes why take that risk in Watergate. We had somebody else enter as kind of an independent Democrat. Do you know who I'm talking about this week? A leading black scholar.
Yeah, and I'm sick of him. It's Cornel West.
Okay, and that's another name that we'll be talking about as he stays.
He's the other guy with an ego.
Well, again, if you meet those three qualifications, right, that we named, you can run for president. Now, Cornel West is not going to be president of the United States. It's not. It's not going to happen. And it's different than me saying Donald Trump is not going to. I didn't say Donald. I just said Donald Trump couldn't win, and I was wrong because he was in. I underestimated the opposition.
You and I
Hillary.
both.
The opposition to Hillary, coupled with support to a man I consider one of the worst examples of humanity ever to walk on the planet. But the problem, of course, becomes, and I don't know whether people will try to talk him out of it, would Republicans or Democrats be more likely to vote for Cornel West? Brian?
Would Republicans or Democrats be
Which party would be more apt to vote for
The,
Cornel West?
the Republican Party would never vote for Cornel West just simply because he's black. They're racist, so they're not going to vote for him. The
So,
Democrats who don't vote for him is because of other issues like the knowing that it's just going to make it difficult for Biden.
and the problem becomes, well, I support anybody's, in theory, I support anybody's running for president, and understand that that is their right. If Cornel West were to run, or Robert Kennedy Jr., which he is running, all they're going to do is pull votes from Biden if they go past the primary. Now, Kennedy and West have not said, they're kind of, but it appears West is going to run as an independent. That's what it looks like. Right. Kennedy is going to try to run as a Democrat, and they may indeed run as an independent. So, again, if you feel strongly about it should not be a Republican president, anyone who enters taking votes from a Democratic candidate becomes the enemy. Obviously, that's something you want to put up, Brian.
Well, I was just, while you're talking, I'm going to just put up the indictment there. The indictment is not specifically where I wanted to go tonight, but I wanted to at least put it there. And it's, if you go to Divided We Stand, I have the file posted. And it's not a bad read. I mean, I haven't read all of it yet, but it's it's double spaced in many places. You'll see that it's probably, I don't know how many pages it is, like 45. It really would only be about 20, 21, 22 pages of actually, if it were single spaced. I'm just looking at some of the, the verbiage there. I'm more, what I wanted to ask you, Dave, and I think people know that we've done shows about Aileen Cannon, and they said this was going to be random. There were like 26 different judges they could have chosen for this indictment in Southern Florida, but they chose her. Some clerk chose her. If you'll look here, it says, but while she's the assigned jurist, she'll have the broad authority to control almost every aspect, including which evidence is admissible, the ability to slow down or speed up proceedings, and even the legal viability of the Justice Department's case. Now, I'm thinking about Bruce Schrader. As you know, how much I don't like Bruce Schrader and didn't like what he did with the case with Kyle Rittenhouse. And what I'm going to ask you, I know there's a lot of people who say, well, she won't be a big problem because they'll probably be able to get rid of her. But I think we're going to find out pretty quickly. Was it on Tuesday he's arraigned?
Mm-hmm.
And with another, I forget the other guy's name, but he'll be arraigned. And the question is, what will she do? Will she go all in on this, or what?
Well, certainly a single jurist, a single judge, over time has come up with some interesting interpretations, right, of things that you didn't expect. I think it happened this week with the, I don't know if you followed the Alabama voting case in the Supreme Court. Surprisingly, John Roberts and Justice Kavanaugh joined with the three liberal judges
and
to say,
and almost not surprisingly, Clarence Thomas went against it.
Which, and for those that don't know,
and he's African American, so it's
basically what happened is, and I might have my numbers wrong, but I think it's right, that, and I'm familiar with the state of Alabama better than I am some other places because my son, daughter-in-law, and two grandchildren live there in Tuscaloosa. But when Alabama redistricted, they were able to make, it came out there was only one African-American dominated district in the state of Alabama. That's how gerrymandered it was. That's impossible to do, with any kind of straight lines. And indeed, the court did find 5-4 with a surprising vote from Roberts' vote. Doesn't surprise me so much, but certainly Kavanaugh's vote does surprise me. So back to answer, I'm kind of going around to say that we don't know. So is this judge? What is this judge going to do? What is the Supreme Court going to do? And so it gets really hard. I mean, it's kind of, I guess it's fun to think, with the indictment, follow the whole case. I think the important thing to remember, two things. Number one, an indictment does not mean the person is guilty. What an indictment says is there's enough evidence here for a jury to decide. So first of all, anybody bringing the indictment, the grand jurors who brought that, I believe there's enough there that there should be a trial or an examination of Donald Trump in the indictment. But of course, while it's still innocent until proven guilty, with Donald Trump, the other thing I think I have to keep in mind is I don't know if his followers care, because they believe, pun intended, all charges against Donald Trump are trumped up. They believe that. Nothing they're going to do.
That's my cousin.
Nothing that's going to change anyone's mind. Facts are not. Discussion is not. And we're getting time to wind down. So I'm going to take us back to where I was originally in the show. And I was talking about, I don't say I was naive, but I believed that politics, let me rephrase that, not politics, governing was successful compromise. Now, the issues that are dividing the country, moral issues, I don't see where the compromise comes in. I mean, if you have people who believe that even the instances of rape, incest, abortion should be prohibited, I mean, how do you argue with that? How do you do that? So I think, and how do you compromise on that issue? So I think as we leave this show tonight, what I heard established kind of in the show is a concern of our viewers and listeners for climate change. I hope we made our position clear. And secondly, excuse me, and then secondly, back to politics, we're going to try to follow this race. But Brian, it's going to get a little tricky when you get 24 Republican candidates, if we just mention their names. So again, I think as I look tonight, close, the Republican race is between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, winner take all, and Joe Biden. That's it for me tonight. So I like this. I hope people who are watching don't mind the shortened version. But remember, we're not shortchanging you. We're just experimenting with some different things in terms of live presentations.
And thank you, Silly. There, I couldn't remember if it was 31 or 37.
Okay.
Ordinarily, we would go through the indictment tonight, and we won't because we're going to go off the air. But we will be on during the week, and it will be an upload video, and it'll probably be afternoonish, late afternoonish. But we'll be definitely doing this. Yeah. So, and like you said, Dave, nobody should think that we are not concerned about climate change. It's just that we've been through this, and we're not putting ourselves above anybody. And we may be wrong, but right now, given the state of the world, it has to be solved politically first, in my opinion. You have to get to the root of the problem, and you got to do something. And you can't just say we're fucked. There's nothing we can do. I mean, you can do that, but it's just not in my nature to give up. So we've got to do something. And we're dealing with the Mansions of the world. By the way, I would not vote for Manchin, by the way, if he were the Democratic nominee. And I think people have been posting that.
I would assume
because he's a Republican.
And I think I can safely say that Joe Manchin is not going to run for president as a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent. What he is doing, and in the news, is he is a Democrat currently who votes Republican on the major issues. And I could see him doing one thing. I don't think the Republicans would even take him on. Even if he wanted to switch parties, I do see the possibility of him running as an independent if he decided not to be a Democrat. But right now, it's still West Virginia is a state that has elected him. The Democrats don't like many of his votes or that he takes, but he's still a Democrat. So I don't see.
They still can control a committee because of that. So that's what they want.
And I don't see. I don't think Joe Manchin. Now, what we do want to keep our eyes on is As you know, politics is very fluid, right, Brian? It changes. What would be interesting, and we should keep our eye on, is if Biden somehow stumbles or it really becomes apparent, will somebody else from the Democratic Party jump in? Right?
Somebody will. Somebody will.
But the point is, my thing is to anyone who's thinking that, I don't see a Democrat who can get as many votes as Joe Biden nationally. One of the reasons is simply name recognition, right? Joe Biden has more name recognition than Kamala Harris, has more name recognition than Buttigieg, has more name
Then maybe it
recognition.
has to be somebody who's not a politician.
Well, of course, that comes up with
Oprah Winfrey.
that's the name that always comes up. And of course, I think Oprah Winfrey is great at what she does. That doesn't make her a great president. I'm
No,
out of
it
here, Brian.
doesn't. But I'd take her instead of Trump. All right, folks. Dave, thank you very much. I'm going to sign off too. I know this is a fast show, but it is what it is, and we will have something during the week. Can't tell you even which day it's going to be, but we'll do it. So thank you, everybody. Dave just signed off from his buddy's place. I want to thank everybody for being here. Again, if you are new to this channel, we ask you to subscribe. We don't ask for anything. It's completely demonetized. We're not in it for the money. We're legit, We don't care about that kind of shit. That's why we give up our time. I want to thank everybody for showing up. Silly Wonka, Karen, Trev, Keith, Joey, Anthony, Global Solidarity, Rudel. Who else was there? I mean, a lot of people here are on incognito, which is fine with us, as we said. Yeah. So I can't tell you which day we're going to be on next week or this coming week. I don't know. But we'll probably upload something at around 5 or 6 o'clock in the late afternoon, and we'll see how things go. Okay. So anyway, thank you, and we'll see everybody next time. See ya.